There is a Matrix comic about aliens. I know that sounds weird as hell, but it's true. The Matrix comics are awesome little extras that provide more backstory and character development to the Matrix universe, and Goliath is one of the best, partly because it seems to ask more questions than it answers, but partly because it's written by Neil Gaiman, one of the most legendary writers and comic book writers there is. So let's deep dive into Goliath with a video that goes into these chapters you see on screen and uncover the story of aliens in the Matrix universe. So what's the story? The story is told in past tense from an unnamed character, that's Goliath, perspective. In 1977, London, England. One day, when Goliath was a teenager, the entire world around him melted away until total blackness was around him. He meets a nicely dressed man who we assume is an agent, who comments on how big Goliath is, and that there has been a missile attack on 200,000 people hooked up to a CPU, which is why Goliath's world melted away, but of course he doesn't really know what's going on. The world then returns back to him, and he has deja vu of the past 20 minutes, implying that the machines had created a backup of the past 20 minutes within the Matrix. Remember, it's all a computer, so they can back things up as data. 10 years later, he's on a subway, and he experiences an infinite loop of the passengers leaving the train again and again. Everything then fades to white, and the agent appears again, telling Goliath that they just talked 37 minutes ago, despite Goliath thinking that 10 years had passed. The agent explains that it was aliens that attacked London in the first place, and they've been running an accelerated version of the Matrix for the past 37 minutes in the real world to generate computing power to formulate a retaliation plan, which is why Goliath has felt like 10 years have passed. The entire world that he's been living in has been accelerated. Goliath briefly wakes up in his real world pod. Suddenly he then wakes up, back on the train, but everything feels back to normal. He talks to a woman next to him named Susan, and they eventually move in together, but she moves out after he comments on how his world feels fake. After experiencing even more deja vu, he then suddenly wakes up back as his 16-year-old self, implying that the machines have now finished whatever retaliation plan they've been devising and are ready to put it into action. Goliath joins the Royal Air Force, where the recruiting officer happens to be the same agent from before, but Goliath only barely remembers him, of course, because he's had his memory wiped. Goliath marries a woman named Sandra and quickly rises up the ranks of the RAF, eventually getting the clearance to fly strange spacecraft. He thinks 10 years pass, which was probably just another 30 minutes in the real world. The agent appears at his house and tells Goliath that he'll be piloting a PL-47, which is a spacecraft that he has now mastered after flying it again and again and again in this Matrix reality. He then wakes up out of the Matrix, outside of his real-world pod, and floats on a strange disc to the PL-47 spacecraft. On the way there, he sees the power plants, thousands of other naked humans just waiting to be plugged in. Goliath gets inside the spacecraft and finds that it fits him perfectly. It was made just for his gigantic size. He zooms out from planet Earth into space and sees the alien ship orbiting the moon, looking like a giant fungus. The alien ship hurls asteroids at him, but they miss, so Goliath gets close enough to destroy the alien ship. He's happy for a moment that he saved planet Earth, until the agent explains that it's all just a one-way trip, and he's now doomed to die in space. Goliath asks to be plugged back into the dream world from before, so he can live out his life with his original wife, Susan. So next question is, how official is all this? This comic book is 100% official. It's from the Matrix comics series, which is a series of 20-30 different comics, all approved by the Wachowskis themselves. So the Wachowskis are the pair that wrote The Matrix, directed The Matrix, did everything, and one of them is even still doing The Matrix 4, which is the film coming out later this year. Therefore, Goliath is 100% official, and we can therefore conclude that there are aliens in the Matrix universe. Neil Gaiman wrote Goliath before The Matrix was even released. After The Matrix was filmed, but before it was released, Warner's set up the What is the Matrix website and put comics and short stories up by various people to help promote it. I was one of those people. They sent me the script and some photocopied storyboards, and I read it and wrote Goliath, which they then put on their website to help promote the film. Next, when in the timeline does this take place? See, this isn't exactly clear, but here is the main clue. The agent says that they have been sending out seed probes into space for a couple hundred years. That's how the aliens started attacking Earth in the first place. We know that a standard cycle of the Matrix is about 100 years, evidenced by Morpheus's speech in The Matrix Reloaded. So that places this story taking place in either one of the early Matrixes, maybe version 4 or 5, or possibly way after the events of The Matrix Online in the future. Next question, where does it take place? Goliath himself is connected to a power plant in London, in the real world. As the agent says, an asteroid hit the London power plant and killed 200,000 people. This is unique as other stories in the Matrix universe don't mention real-world locations. They say things like megacity, or the mountains, or downtown. So considering what happens in Goliath, what does this all mean? So the headline is that aliens exist in the Matrix universe, so that's kind of crazy. Another implication of the Goliath storyline is that machines can control human perception of time. So we've seen before how machines can control human perception of pain and pleasure and things like that because they simply write the code. However, we've never really seen before where a machine can control how fast a human perceives something, other than giving Neo the ability to, dodge things super quick. But here, they've deliberately forced Goliath to experience 10 years worth of his feeling in about 30 minutes of real-world time. The next implication is machines have mastered spaceflight, so that's another big one along with the aliens headline. The machines have somehow advanced so greatly that they've created spacecraft and they're sending things into space. And another implication is that the machines have empathy, which we've already seen before. The machines kindly allow Goliath to be plugged back into the Matrix to happily live out his final years. Now, if they were simply ruthless, cold, hard machines like the Terminator, then why would they do this? They wouldn't. They would just let Goliath die in space. As we've seen before, as we've seen with the Oracle gradually evolving and gaining empathy, we've seen with Agent Smith gradually developing hate, what this all means is that machines have gradually developed emotions, and in this case, empathy. Okay, here's the big thing, 3 unanswered questions. How can machines send out probes, as the agent says they've been doing for the past couple hundred years, if electrical devices are disabled by the energy in the clouds? So as we've seen in the Matrix Revolutions, when the hovercraft zooms up past the clouds and all the Sentinels follow, the Sentinels are completely broken by the electrical storm in the clouds and they just fall back down to the ground. The question is, how the hell have probes been sent out from Earth if they have to get past that electrical storm in the cloud? Next unanswered question, why did the machines need a human to fight the aliens? They were able to build this incredible spacecraft in about an hour or 2, so why didn't they just build another machine to pilot the spacecraft? And the big one, does this connect to The Matrix 4? Obviously, we have no idea about that until The Matrix 4 comes out later this year, but I'd love to know what you think. Please tell me below if you think this is going to have any connection to The Matrix 4, and if you like this video, then please give it a like and subscribe because I'm going to be releasing a brand new Matrix video every single week. My name is George, this is Jam Punch, and I'll see you next time.